It feels like it's been a while since I've done a video just recommending thriller books, and so today I wanted to sit down and do another batch of thriller book recommendations based on your favorite tropes. I did this video before, but it was so long ago. I went back to look at that video and that was like 2 moves ago from 2 states ago in a completely different environment when my channel was completely different and my reading was completely different. Not totally different. I was still reading a lot of thrillers back then, but I've read so many books since then and I really had a lot of fun putting that video together, but there's so many more tropes to explore. There's so many more books to talk about. And so today I'm going to be going through even more tropes with even more book recommendations so that you can hopefully find the next great thriller book for you. First up, we're going to talk about dystopian thriller books. These are books that are set in a world a little bit different from ours, that has gone a little bit of a darker path and has a compelling story to tell. The first one is The Getaway by Lamar Giles. This is a young adult book that blends a lot of different genre elements. It's a thriller, there's a mystery, there are horror elements, it is dystopian, it is a big mash of a lot of different things. And in this story, you're following a group of teens who live at this place called Karloff Country. It's basically like a Disneyland, and this is this place that is sheltered and safe from the exterior world. The dystopian world in this setting isn't too far off from our world today and a lot of issues that we have today. It's just a little bit like a 5-minute in the future type story if things got a little bit worse in a lot of different ways. But at Karloff Country, everyone thinks that they are safe from everything horrible that's going on in the world. But these teenagers that you're following start to realize they may not be so safe there after all, after one of their friends' families goes missing, and then they start uncovering darker secrets about what's really going on at Karloff Country. As I mentioned, this is a young adult book, so I would recommend picking this one up if you like young adult books, and obviously if you don't, this one might not be for you. The other dystopian thriller book recommendation I have is an adult thriller book, and that is The Drift by C.J. Tudor. This one just recently came out this year, and C.J. Tudor is one of my favorite authors, so it is no surprise that I enjoyed this book. In this story, the dystopian setting of the world is because of this virus that has gone around the world, so it's like a pandemic, which also is pretty familiar to the world we live in today. And you are following 3 different characters' journeys in this world. They all have the same context of the world being in disaster, and they're all being put in dangerous situations, and you're trying to figure out how these stories all are connected. You're following a woman named Hannah who is on a coach bus that crashed. She wakes up and half of the members of the bus are dead. There's another half that are still alive and they are stuck and they don't know if they're going to be able to get out. There's a woman named Meg who wakes up in a similar type of situation where she is stuck on a cable car that is just hanging in the middle of the journey that they were trying to take. And then you're following this guy named Carter who lives at this place called The Retreat, which is the place that both Hannah's group and Meg's group were both trying to get to. The Retreat is supposed to be a place that is safer in this apocalyptic situation, but things are starting to go awry there as well. This one had a really cinematic quality to it. You really felt the whole world picture being brought into the story. All of the characters had such depth in them, and it really felt like something that would translate super well to like a TV show or even a movie. Also, as the cover suggests, this includes isolated, snowy settings, so if you like that as well, then I would definitely recommend picking this one up. Speaking of isolated settings, the next grouping of books we're going to talk about are all locked room mystery thrillers. So this means there are a group of people who are all stuck in a situation together and dead people are showing up, and it's got to be someone who's in the room. First in this group is one of my favorite thrillers of the year so far, and that is The Writing Retreat by Julia Bartz. This is a story where we're following a group of women who get invited to this exclusive writing retreat that this famous author is hosting. It seems like this great opportunity for these women to get to go to this famous author's isolated, out in the middle of nowhere house to focus on their books, get a chance to write, and get a chance to learn from someone that they look up to. But once they arrive, they realize the stakes are higher than they thought they would be, and things go in a dark direction. I had so much fun with this one. It's one of those ridiculous style thrillers that is over the top and just a little bit silly, so if you like books like that too, I highly recommend picking this one up. Next is Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone by Benjamin Stevenson. This is a book that follows a story that I'm sure you can get a glimpse of based on the title of the book, where you're following this guy and he's telling you this story, and everyone in his family has apparently killed someone. They're all getting back together for a family reunion out in this snowy, isolated setting, and then someone ends up dead and you don't know who did it, and they're all stuck there together, and it is a zany group of family members. The tone of this one is so fun. I love the writing style. It breaks the fourth wall with the reader, and it's just really witty and snarky, and it just has a nice fresh feel while also still feeling like a classic murder mystery with a locked room setting. This one is also the start of a series. As of the time of filming this video, this is the only one out, but I am very much looking forward to seeing what happens in the next one. And the final recommendation that I have for this trope is Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney. Now, this wasn't personally one of my favorite books, but I like the idea of it. I think it has potential, and a lot of people do enjoy it. I just personally don't love Alice Feeney's writing style, but I think that's more of a personal thing. This is a story that is inspired by Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None, so if you like Agatha Christie style retellings, then definitely check this one out. You're following a set of family members who are all coming together for the grandmother's 80th birthday. They are going out to this isolated island type setting, and when it storms, they get stuck there because water's rising and getting off the island one way or another. So of course it's storming when they arrive, they're stuck there, and then grandma ends up dead. And then more people keep dying, and you don't know who in the family is responsible, but you figure it's gotta be someone in the family because they're all just stuck there together. Similar to Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone, this one also has a nice classic murder mystery feel since it's inspired off of an Agatha Christie story, but it has a fresh, modern feel to the story as well. So if you're looking for more books like that, then definitely give this one a try. The next trope I want to talk about is what I call marriage gone awry. I really enjoy just reading about a marriage or a relationship that just gets messy. And these two books that I have to talk about definitely fit into that category. The first one is a newer book, and that is The Soulmate by Sally Hepworth. In this story, you're following a married couple who lives at this house on a cliff, and people often will visit this cliff. It is known to be a popular place where people go and try to take their own lives. Because the couple lives in a house right there, they can see when people are going out to the cliff, and typically the husband will go out there, talk to the stranger, and talk them back off the ledge. He's kind of known as like a little local town hero for doing that, but one day when he goes to talk to the woman who's standing out there, it doesn't go so well, and she does end up going off of the cliff. Whether she jumped or he pushed her is to be determined, and the wife begins to get suspicious when she realizes that they know who that woman is and her husband has a connection to her, and she doesn't know if she can trust her husband anymore. I absolutely love Sally Hepworth's writing style. I feel like her books just read so fast, her characters feel so authentic, and I just get so sucked into her stories. If you also like these plot lines where marriages are getting a little rocky because of something going on in their lives, then this is definitely one I would recommend picking up. Another one I have in this category is a little bit of an older book, but I actually didn't read this until like the past year or so. It's just one of those books I never got around to reading. I know people really enjoyed it, and then I finally read it, and I totally understand why people enjoy it because it is so compulsively readable, and that is Behind Closed Doors by B.A. Paris. This is a story all about this couple who looks like the perfect couple. It looks like their marriage is great, but when you find out what's really going on behind closed doors, you realize there is a lot darker things going on in their marriage. It was such a page turner. It is a dark book. It takes a dark turn. It's a frustrating book. It will make you angry at these characters, but you just cannot put it down. It is such a thrilling read, and if you somehow like me put it off for a ton of years, I definitely recommend checking it out. The next trope I have to talk about is not one that I really consider a favorite trope of mine. I wouldn't think that if you just ask me what my favorite thriller tropes are, but when I was looking at the batch of thriller books that I wanted to recommend and categorizing them into tropes, I realized these two books did stand out, and that trope is the missing person trope. It's a pretty simple one. It's a classic one in the thriller category, and these are just stories where someone goes missing and someone else is trying to find them. The first one is a book called Going Dark by Melissa de la Cruz. This is a young adult mystery thriller that is about an influencer who has gone missing. The influencer, Amelia Ashley, went on vacation with her boyfriend to Rome, and he came back from the trip and she did not. And so you follow a couple different point of views throughout the book as you're trying to figure out what happened to Amelia Ashley. One of those point of views includes the boyfriend, and then you also get this girl named Harper, who is a hacker who was going through all of the available data about Amelia Ashley, whether that is her publicly available stuff like the vlogs that she has put out, or scoping through some more private documents as well to try to uncover the true story of Amelia Ashley and what has happened to her. This was not the most original mystery thriller I have ever read, I will say. It didn't take me completely off guard, but I did think it was just so sharp and it was executed so well, and it tells a really important story about the types of girls that get attention when they go missing and the types of girls that unfortunately do not. The next book I have to recommend with this trope is I'll Be You by Janelle Brown. I feel like Janelle Brown isn't the most talked about thriller author, but I always end up picking up her books and really enjoying them. They kind of fall more on the literary suspense spectrum of thrillers. They're not usually action-packed, fast-paced, kind of ridiculous type thrillers. They're more on the literary suspense, slower, more concerned with building the world, building the characters type of books, which I also really enjoy those as well. This is a story about these two sisters who are twin sisters that were very close when they were children, and then as they grew older, things in life led them to lead separate paths. But one day, one sister gets a call that the other one has now gone missing. She recently adopted a child, and then she checked into a spa and she has not come back, and there's no contact with her and they have no idea where she is. So the other sister puts her pride to the side and decides to go figure out what happened to her sister and explore what's been going on in her life, if she is now in a cult, and figure out what has happened to her and hopefully be able to bring her back. The cult aspect is important to bring up because I know people feel very strongly about thrillers with cult elements, either really enjoying them or really straying away from them. And I personally do not typically enjoy cult thrillers. There have not been many that I actually liked. I usually don't enjoy them, but in this book I actually really enjoyed just the whole story that it was telling. It didn't fall into a lot of the pitfalls of what cult thriller books tend to do for me that make me not like them as much. The writing in this one is excellent, the character building is excellent, and it's just a really great sister story too. So if you like thriller books or just general fiction books that are about sisters and the connection between them despite all the challenges that life may bring, then I would recommend picking this one up. The next trope is one that I personally don't read a lot of, and so I always think I will not have good recommendations for people who are looking for books like this, but I did have a couple on my list, and that is serial killer thrillers. I don't come across a lot of these because I don't really gravitate towards picking up crime-based thrillers or detective-based thrillers, and I feel like that is where the serial killer thriller trope often comes up. These two books are both kind of crime thrillers, but they're also a blend of other things, and I really enjoyed both of them, so I'm excited to tell you about them. The first one is a newer book that is The Angel Maker by Alex North. I've always really enjoyed everything I've read from Alex North, and so it was no surprise that I really enjoyed this one as well. Alex North has a really interesting way of combining a lot of different elements. They are like crime books, mystery, thriller, and they also tend to have a hint of the supernatural in them as well, where you're not necessarily sure if it's fully leaning into the paranormal or if there's going to be a real life explanation, but there's typically something potentially supernatural going on. And I really like the way that Alex North just seamlessly blends all of those genre elements and tells really compelling fast-paced stories. This one had a lot going on. There's a lot in this story. There's a serial killer who claims to predict the future. That is where the serial killer aspect comes into it. You're following a sister who has let down her brother once before. He got attacked in his past and now he's gone missing as they're grown up, and she doesn't want to let him down again, so she wants to find what has happened to him. And there's also a detective perspective because at the beginning of the story, a professor who teaches on fate and free will ends up murdered, and the detective is trying to investigate that case and also see if it connects to any cold cases going on. So like I said, a lot packed into this one. That was really my only complaint with it, was there was almost too much happening that you didn't get every story fully fleshed out, but it was still an entertaining one, and it does have that creepy serial killer element because there are some gruesome things that happen in this book. And then the second book I have to recommend in this category is The Good Lie by HORROR-A. In this story, there is a serial killer who goes around and kills teenage boys, and you are following two characters who are coming together to try to figure out who the serial killer is after someone does get sent away to jail, but he's claiming he was not the person who actually committed the murders. The two perspectives you're following is a psychiatrist and a defense attorney, and the interesting thing about the defense attorney is that he is actually the father of a boy who was a victim of this serial killer, and even he does not believe that the person who has been put away is the one who was responsible. You also get a little bit of a romantic subplot element between these two characters as they're investigating the crime time, which is something that I don't particularly seek out, but I thought it was well done in this one, where it didn't take up too much of the story, but it was just the right amount to just add a little bit of spice to the story that I did enjoy. The next trope I want to talk about is thriller books where there is someone watching you. Not you, the reader, but the character in the book. These are stalker books. People who get obsessed with people, or they're stalking them, or they're blackmailing them for one reason or another. And I just love the effect this has on a thriller book. It just adds a level of creepiness to it. And I really enjoyed all three of these books I have in this category and would highly recommend them. The first one is The New Neighbor by Carter Wilson. This is a story about this dad and his two children who are moving to a new town after the loss of his wife and the children's mother. They're moving to try to get away from all of the grief and just to try to find a new start in life. They're also moving because on the day his wife died, he also did happen to win the lottery and come across a lot of money that helps him restart this life, which is a weird coincidence that you can guarantee will play a factor in the book. And once they move to this new town and this new house, they start receiving threatening notes that someone is watching them. I remember I was reading this one in the summer by the pool, and it was just the perfect pool read because it's so intriguing, it just reads so quickly, and just that creepy element of it just adds so much to it because they're moving to this new small town, they're meeting other people in the town, and they don't know if they can trust anyone they're meeting. It's also not one that I hear talked about a lot, so I always love to recommend it to give it a little bit more love. Next up is Ace of Spades by Farida Abiki-Iyamidi. This is another young adult book, so there's been a couple young adults sprinkled throughout this list if you like to read young adult as well. But this is a young adult book that is set at this academy where these two students who are at the top of their class, I think they call them prefects? Yes, they call them prefects. I did not go to a fancy academy, so I'm not familiar with that term. Anyway, the two main characters, Devon and Chiamaka, are both at the top of their class. They are the prefects of the class. And after they receive that honor, they start being targeted by this person who goes by Aces and is sending out anonymous text messages to everyone in their school, blackmailing them, exposing their secrets, and potentially ruining their chances for them to be able to continue to be successful and go off to college and live the rest of their lives. Maybe it's just me because I love this trope so much, but I just find these books so compulsively readable because you just don't know what's going to happen. You're like, who is it going to be? I can't trust anyone. Who's trying to expose them? How are they going to get out of this situation? I just find these types of thrillers so engaging. And I should say this one also has blends of horror in the story as well. It explores on social horror elements regarding racism and classism and privilege, and it is just done so well. It is so fast-paced, so intriguing, and even though it's a long one, I definitely recommend it because it does read very quickly and it is very much worth it. And last in this category, I have Perfect Days by Rafael Montez. This is a story about this guy named Teo who becomes obsessed with this woman, and he thinks that she is going to fall in love with him, and the way that he goes about doing that is that he abducts her and takes her on a road trip and yeah, just keeps her for himself. I often compare this book to the book or the show You by Caroline Kepnes, which was adapted into a show on Netflix. I think it was actually a Lifetime show for the first season and then Netflix ended up carrying it on, but irrelevant. Anyways, if you are interested in reading more characters like Joe Goldberg, this character definitely fits the bill for that. It is dark, it is creepy, and it keeps you so engaged because you just want to know if this girl is going to be able to make it out okay. And the last trope that I have to talk about is probably the one that I read the most in thriller books, especially mystery thriller blends. This tends to be pretty common in mystery stories that have thriller elements, and that is the uncovering the past trope, where a character is just trying to figure out what happened in the past that has led to the circumstances of the present. The first book I have to talk about in this category is The House in the Pines by Ana Reyes. In this story, you're following a woman named Maya, and in her past, she witnessed her best friend Aubrey die right in front of her eyes. And there was also this man who was present at the time who plays an important role in the story because what is happening now in the present day is Maya is watching a YouTube video one day and she sees a video of a woman sitting in a diner having lunch with someone, and then she dies right in front of him, and that is the same man from her past. So Maya thinks there's got to be something going on with this guy, and she is determined to dig into what is going on in the present to finally figure out what actually happened in her past. This was such an atmospheric, lushly written, layered, beautiful, intricate mystery thriller book that I enjoyed so much. There's a lot of different things going on in this book, and that was my only complaint, is I didn't feel like everything came together perfectly, but the twist in this one I thought was so interesting. I love the story that the book was trying to tell, and this is one of those books that just sticks out in my memory as being a little bit more unique out of all of the many mystery thriller books that I read, and so I definitely recommend giving this one a try. Next up is You Must Remember This by Kat Rosenfield. I remember when this book was first being marketed, it was being called a Knives Out style whodunit, and I feel like that leads your expectations astray in the wrong direction for this one. I can see where the Knives Out comparison comes in because this is a story about a family getting together. There's the death of the matriarch, there's inheritance talk, you think someone in the family might have done it for various reasons, so it has similar elements to Knives Out in that way, but if you are a seasoned mystery thriller reader, it's not going to feel that much like a whodunit because it's going to be pretty clear to you who done it, but the why is really what you're exploring in this book. And it's a story about family secrets and seeing people for who they really are, and just the ways we rewrite our own histories in our mind when we think back on the stories of our lives. The plot of the book, as I mentioned, is a family is coming together, it's Christmas time, and the grandmother, Miriam, ends up dying. She ends up falling through the ice of a frozen over lake that she used to frequent in her past when she would go out along that path to go meet her lover. And so you're following Miriam's story in the past as she was a teenager exploring love for the first time, and you're also following the present day with Miriam for a bit and then also with her family after Miriam's passing, and you're trying to connect what the significance is of Miriam's story and what happened to her. If all that happened was her losing her sense of time and place as an older woman, experiencing the symptoms of dementia, and she wandered off and just happened to fall into the ice, or if there was something more nefarious at play with one of the members of the family. Again, not the most like action-packed thriller. This is certainly more of a mystery story, but I did really enjoy it and I didn't want to leave it off the list. Another good mystery that has thriller elements that is all about uncovering the secrets of the past is The Book of Cold Cases by Simone St. James. Back in 1977, there were a string of murders that got tied back to this woman who then became known as the Lady Killer. These crimes got pinned back to this woman named Beth Greer, who was a woman in her young 20s who was successful and beautiful and just happened to be around the scenes of the crimes, but she ended up getting acquitted. They could not pin the murders on her, and she has gone about living the rest of her life in infamy. Now, in present day 2017, this true crime blogger gets the opportunity to interview Beth and finally learn the truth of what happened all of those years ago. If you've ever read a Simone St. James book before, this feels like a Simone St. James book. It is atmospheric, it is leaning on these supernatural elements of the story too, and she also does just tend to write these stories where there are women in two timelines trying to connect what happened between them. I remember when I read this one, it was like a rainy weekend. It was the perfect, cozy, rainy weekend mystery to read, and if you've never read a Simone St. James book before, I think this is also a perfect place to start. And the last book I have to recommend in this category is from an author we talked about earlier in the video, and that is The Burning Girls by CJ Tudor. This is definitely my favorite CJ Tudor book that I have read so far, and it is the perfect book to fit into this trope of uncovering the secrets of the past. In this story, you are following a reverend and the reverend's teenage daughter as they are moving to this town. It is a small English village that has a lot of dark history. Most recently, the town's latest vicar hung themselves in the parish, so that is why the reverend is coming to town with their child. 30 years ago, 2 girls in the town went missing, and 500 years ago, Protestant martyrs were burned in this town. Throughout the story, you are following the Reverend Jack and teenage daughter Flo as they are connecting with others in the small town and trying to piece together the story of the town's past and figure out if they are safe today, because there's some creepy things going on, and this also is a book that has potential supernatural things going on, religious tones, and just incredible atmosphere. As I mentioned, this is my absolute favorite CJ Tudor book that I've read so far, so if you're interested in picking up a book from CJ Tudor, this is definitely a great place to start. That's it. That's all I have for my thriller book recommendations by various tropes. Let me know down in the comments below if I convinced you to pick any of these books up. Also, let me know if you have any additional recommendations that fit any of these tropes. And finally, let me know if you enjoyed this video and you would like to see me do this again, and if there are other thriller tropes that you would like me to give recommendations for in the future. But that is it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye.